Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my YouTube channel after what feels like a year lasting break. Today I'm coming to you with the new episode about my Erasmus Mundus journey. I haven't been talking to you for a while, that's why I have a lot of new information, a lot of new content, but that was also because there was so much happening that I just simply wasn't able to record physically and mentally. I wasn't capable of doing that. So now I am back with my videos, so if you're interested about the continuation of the Erasmus Mundus journey, then stay here with me and let's get straight into the episode. I just want to add that during the episode there might be some cats walking around, so they will be my guests for today, so do not mind them. Hopefully they will not destroy the camera or the decorations, so let's keep fingers crossed and let's enjoy them somewhere in the background. I'm so happy to be back and I'm really excited. As I mentioned, I have more content for you, so if you don't want to miss anything, then subscribe to the channel and interact with me here. That will really help me and maybe motivate me even more to create the content. Click a subscribe, click a like, and let's get into the video. So today I want to catch up with everything that has happened in the last few months. The last thing that I was updating you on regarding my Erasmus Mundus journey was sometime during the summer, just after I finished my semester in Riga. So what happened since then? Alright, so after I finished my semester in Riga, that was just before the summer started. During the summer I was doing my internship, which I will be talking about a little bit later. But the next semester, the autumn semester, moved all of us, 15 of us, to a new country. So we went to Slovakia, to the small city called Ruzomberok, which is located actually very close to the Polish border. I had a direct bus that was taking me from my hometown in Poland directly to Ruzomberok, so that was an excellent connection. I was actually going back home on this road quite often. And this is where we're located. Ruzomberok is a small town in Lower Tatras, located in Slovakia. It's very famous for the paper making factory. Therefore, when you're there, you can see the factory working. There's I would say quite a lot of pollution, and people say that the smell is quite funny. So personally I haven't really felt that much, but Slovakians and people who visited, they tend to claim so. Ruzomberok is a very small place surrounded by nature. There is a lot of mountains around, not so high mountains, but definitely mountains that you can hike, that you can go for a walk to. There is a forest, there is a lake, so there is a lot of nature to actually immerse yourself with. So I definitely enjoyed that part a lot. What else? Ruzomberok has everything that you might actually need. There is obviously some grocery stores, there are some restaurants, there are some bars, there are a few gyms if you enjoy working out, there is a cinema, there is actually quite a lot of going on if you get interested into this cultural aspect. of Ruzomberok, there is the university, obviously, so there are youth, and there is quite, maybe not a lot, but there are some international students. And regarding the academic and university life, there is something happening as well. There are some conferences that I participated in as well. There are some events, some fairs. So there is actually stuff to do, and obviously it's not a capital, it's not a very big place, so you get familiar with everything around very quickly. Therefore, being there for half a year, as we were supposed to, from September until January, it's actually quite a long time, I would say. But that didn't really affect me, and now I'll tell you why. So during my semester in Ruzomberok, everything was actually very hectic in my life, and I had a lot of things, a lot of projects going on at the same time. Therefore, we were supposed to move to Slovakia in September, and this is where I actually moved all of my things to the accommodation where we were staying. But I didn't really stay there for a very long time. I've been to so many countries and so many places, traveling through different continents, that I simply didn't have time to stay in Ruzomberok. But I absolutely loved that intense and hectic period. I was changing airports and countries and places like basically every day. It was a lot. So I was enjoying it greatly, and this, I would say, monotony maybe, or boredom that could affect you, or that I know that affected some of my colleagues living in Ruzomberok, didn't really affect me because of that reason, because I was moving around, I was doing a lot. And you might be wondering, how is that even possible if I am a full-time student, a master's student? How is that even possible that I have so much time for traveling? So September and October, they were months that were not really intense. We had intensive weeks at the University of Ruzomberok. I attended one of them, and then we actually had more than a month of break, and that month was supposed to serve us as the time to undertake the internship that is also a part of this program. However, I did my internship during the summer. I completed the hours, and I spent this time in Riga. I was doing my internship in Riga. Therefore, I didn't have to do it in October. So the time that some of my colleagues were spending doing their internships, I had free. And by free, of course, I don't mean that I was not doing anything regarding to my studies, but I didn't have to do the internship. So this whole semester was actually very, very busy, and we had a lot of tasks and work and presentations and meetings and things to do. So October was a time for me to maybe smoothly get into the rhythm. I was traveling a bit during that month as well. I went to Georgia, I went to Armenia, I was in different places. And only then, when I came back, I think it was at the beginning of November, the amount of work and the amount of everything really hit me. And that was a lot of responsibility, a lot of time management involved to actually manage the whole thing, considering that our classes also came back with a very high intensity. So we were spending a lot of time during the lectures at the university, while at the same time managing our work and the internship and the whole summary from our internship. So what subjects did we actually have this semester? And now let me read that for you. The first one was Youth Intercultural Communication. The second one was Scientific Research Practice for the master thesis. So this one is the internship that I was mentioning. We had the whole report to prepare about it, the whole theory, the research practice phase that we did that was supposed to be related to our master thesis. So personally, I actually think that was quite useful, and it really pushed all of us to start the research for our thesis that we need to upload by the end of April, I believe. So people had the motivation and, well, a strong push to actually work on the thesis, on the most important part of this program. Then the next program, it was the digital technologies in social work with children and youth, and I think that was probably one of the most interesting modules in terms of the content and novelty. We learned a lot about the tools that you can use online, about the e-social work, digital social work, what are the challenges faced by the social workers nowadays in the digital era, what are the benefits for the social workers and for the clients and users of the technology and of this new digital world that is entering the profession and actually penetrating it. So there has been a lot of very interesting informations. We had to do our own online facilitation. There was some essays to write about the use of robots in social work and what do we actually think about it. So I think that this part of the course actually impacted me quite a lot, and I learned quite a lot during that part. And here we have our guest. Another module that we had this semester was the development and evaluation of social projects. And this personally for me is one of the most important parts, since I am involved in the Erasmus I would say world and I participate in a lot of projects. Starting my own NGO is definitely on my mind, therefore writing projects is something that is crucial for the further development, and we actually had that included in our course, so I did not really expect that, I would say, and the fact that we got a really good professor who told us some insights and like small things and interesting, facts about this part, this whole topic. It was really beneficial. And then the last one was a socio-cultural empowerment of different youth groups, and this again is very related to what I am doing, since being involved in different Erasmus projects, I run different workshops, I work with different youth groups, and having the whole theory of what actually is the socio-cultural animation and empowerment, and how can we use it depending on different youth groups and their needs and their and the results that might be created out of it. It also cleared my mind quite a lot in terms of workshop preparation and working with different youth. It's not that it was mind-blowing and all of the information were very new, but definitely the theory added to what I already knew, what I already practiced in my life. So these were the subjects that we had. It sounds very interesting, and to a certain extent it was very interesting. Some of the things, however, were very easy, and I'm not gonna lie here, so it really felt like I was spending some time during the Erasmus exchange, practicing all of the activities that I am usually doing during the projects at my seminars and at the university. It felt maybe not equal to, you know, the master course that I'm actually doing. So I had some issues with that, but all in all, I think that this semester was definitely the most intense one in terms of the content and things that we were doing. I learned a lot, I was pushed to do a lot, I was writing a lot, and that was actually really good. So what is happening next? Now we are in January. Last week I finished all of my exams that we still had at the beginning of the month. Everything was online, so we could take them from any part of the world. Currently I'm located in Poland, and I am waiting impatiently to take my flight to our next destination, and that is Lisbon in Portugal. I have everything booked, and I am really waiting and anticipating this moment of taking on to the flight and going to Lisbon, where currently there is somewhere about 20 degrees. I'm really looking forward to it. And about our semester in Ruzomberok, so I think everything is summarized. Our grades are not really put into the system yet, so we don't really know the final results of everything. However, I strongly believe that everyone passed with really good scores, with really high grades, and now we will actually focus on writing our master thesis only. So I am already in the stage of conducting the research. I'm collecting the data that I will be analyzing very soon, and yes, I must admit it's exciting, it's quite worrying, but it's part of the process, so I just accept how it is and what it is. So I am here, I am ready to post more, even though I know that this semester will be quite intense in terms of work and writing. I really want to share with you this journey, this process. So if you're interested in the reality of the Erasmus Mundus, and especially this program, European Social Work with children and youth, then stay here with me. And next week I will talk to you more about the internship that I undertook in Riga. How did I actually find it? What was I actually doing as a social work student? Yes, if you are interested in maybe the content or the reality of the social worker or the student of the social work, then I think you might find this video very useful. So stay tuned, and yeah, as I said, I will see you here next week. Bye!